Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining me for the second part of the Kybalion. If you're here for the second part, if this is your first time, welcome as well. So last time I think we wrapped up on gender, so that's where we'll start this time. Um, I wanted to, of course, have the spoken book just playing, but our microphone I've almost just given up. Um, is there no audio or something? I noticed that all of our viewers just dropped off. I don't know if they were expecting a topless supermodel or, or what, but as soon as okay, there's some people back. All right. Um, so I've been extremely busy, and I didn't quite uh, have time to find my place in the book. So let me just take a second to thank everyone that has supported. Um, it's a crazy time. Keep an eye out also for man. I really should have marked the spot where we where we left off last time. Keep an eye out for my first T-shirt design. We're having some trouble getting it set up, um, but I'm determined to get it done tonight. So that should be okay. So there's vibration. Gender. Okay, here we go. So now we are on to mental transmutation. And this is, of course, what's up, Nick? This is, of course, probably the most important of all of the Hermetic principles. I've been talking a lot about alchemy lately, mostly because my patrons asked that we did a poll and they wanted to hear about alchemy. And so I'm talking about alchemy, and it got me thinking about alchemy and and how it's really the fundamental process in the universe. It's the thing that everything is doing. As human beings, we are transmutating or transmuting. Transmutating actually isn't a real word, by the way. It's found in the literature regarding alchemy, but it would be transmuting. But transmutating is the word that is generally used in alchemy. So. And so that's generally what we're doing with everything. Carbon, it becomes different. Carbon becomes a diamond. This is the prima materia being transmuted into diamond. You know, the philosopher's stone. And I could come up with infinite examples. What's up? What's up, Big C 248? You're gonna want one of these shirts. I don't know if people are gonna be mad at me or not, but it's hilarious and it's perfect, man. I really think I have a viral idea, and I'm gonna post it in the community. Most of you guys probably couldn't even get away with wearing them, but but I think it's great, man. Hopefully we can get it going tonight, because I really think I can get a viral product out of this. But I can only sell it to certain people. Anyways, you guys will see. It'll be a surprise. Um, and so everything in the universe is doing this process of transmutation. Carbon is doing it. Human beings are doing it when we convert our suffering and our hardships and our missteps into knowledge and experience and wisdom and higher consciousness. Right? We're constantly transmutating the lead of everyday experience into the gold of higher consciousness. And then all of these other elements are doing it as well. But the process is actually a process of consciousness. And so the mental transmutation, um, hello, Mr. John Richards, the mental transmutation is, that is the source. That's where this is actually happening, even when it's happening in the external world, believe it or not. Um, because the all is mind, and well, we'll get to all that. But so, so learning the art of mental transmutation is the most important skill that you can have, and it's really crucial in this at this juncture in human history, because we are having to uh, you know sift through the wheat, the chaff for the wheat to an extent that probably no generation in human history ever has. And it's a bunch of dark, useless crap that we are trying to extract something meaningful from. Um, and so, having the skills to neutralize our anger, but not to neutralize it, to transmute it into something more useful. And sorry, that's weird. It's a crazy sound outside. In order to transmute any type of emotion that doesn't serve us into some other form, um, absolutely essential. So, mental transmutation, mind as well as metals and elements may be transmuted from state to state, degree to degree, condition to condition, pole to pole, vibration to vibration. True hermetic transmutation is a mental art. So, again, this is one of the foundations, and it's also worth considering that we're not always, it's not something as profound necessarily as changing one element to another form. But when the occult, we speak of the fiery nature of water, and you could cite steam as an example of that. Or when water becomes ice, then it's an earthy expression of water. So we're also talking about being able to see and understand the potential for transformation in everything around us that can be turned to our purposes. As we have stated, the Hermetists were the original alchemists, astrologers, and psychologists. Hermes having been the founder of these schools of thought. From astrology has grown modern astronomy, from alchemy has grown modern chemistry, from the mystic psychology has grown the modern psychology of the schools. It must not be supposed that the ancients were ignorant of what the modern schools suppose to be their exclusive and special property. The records engraved on the stones of ancient Egypt show conclusively that the ancients had a full comprehensive knowledge of astronomy. The very building of the pyramids show the connection between their design and the study of the astronomical science. And to go even deeper with this, there is an observation that has been made that the coordinates of the pyramid, dead center, is the same as the speed of light. And the obvious problem with this, in terms of claiming that it has some kind of significance, is that those coordinates were meaningless when the Egyptians built the pyramids. But to the Hermeticist, we understand that because the all is mind, it is a coincidence in a sense, but it's not. It's a synchronicity, and it's a synchronicity on a macro scale, which is something that as our consciousness comes into homeostasis and more people are awakened, we're going to notice these things, and people are going to search and search and search for uh, Western style explanations for these kinds of observations, and they're not going to come up with any, because you have to have a deeper understanding of the universe and how it works to understand how it is that the pyramids ended up so specifically with the same coordinates as the speed of light. This is the kind of discovery that you will make when you start to understand that the all is mind, right? So there's that. Nor were they ignorant of chemistry, for the fragments of the ancient writings show that they were acquainted with the chemical properties of things. In fact, batteries have been found in a ziggurat in Iraq that date back to about the time of ancient Egypt. And they were very basic, but they were indeed batteries for the purpose of powering what, I guess, is the question. Um, and then they also knew other things relating to the constitution of matter. And I would point out that Plato was a student of the mysteries, and it may have been the mysteries of Isis, um, which all of these mysteries are connected to Egypt. But if we consider the fact that Plato also had an association with the mystery schools of Thoth or Hermes, and he knew about atoms 2,500 years ago, then we can see that there is some veracity to the claim that these ancient mystery school adepts did indeed know things about the universe that they shouldn't have been able to know. Um, Further insight into how that might be, aside from the practices of meditation and contemplation and the different trials and tribulations of the mysteries, uh, these psychoactive beverages that were used. When one of the physicists, I can't recall his name, but he made a major breakthrough in our understanding of molecules. He was asked right before his death how he was able to know this before we had telescopes. And he said that taking really high doses of LSD allowed him to actually get inside of the molecule and look around. And so, I wouldn't even say guess. My near certainty is that a lot of the serious advances that people like Plato and other mystery school initiates and adepts have demonstrated are directly related to the consumption of these psychoactive beverages. So Egyptians were especially skilled in the science of psychology, particularly in the branches that modern schools ignore, which would be parapsychology, is what we call it, or psychic science. Um, Beneath the material, chemistry, astronomy, and psychology, the ancients possessed a knowledge of transcendental astronomy called astrology, of transcendental chemistry called alchemy, of transcendental psychology called mystic psychology. They possessed the inner knowledge as well as the outer knowledge, the latter alone being possessed by modern scientists. Among the many branches of knowledge possessed by the Hermetists was that known as mental transmutation, which forms the subject matter of this lesson. Transmutation is a term usually employed to designate the ancient art of the transmutation of metals, particularly of the base metals of gold. The word transmute means to change from one nature, form, or substance into another. And accordingly, mental transmutation means the art of changing and transforming mental states, forms, and conditions into others. So you may see that mental transmutation and the art of mental chemistry, if you like the term, a form of practical mystical psychology. So, even beyond that, when we talk about mental transmutation, um, we are also potentially talking about using the mind to develop a non-ordinary relationship with the fuel source, for example. We have people that are, what are they called? They don't eat, they only aeritarians or breatharians, right? And it sounds completely woo-ridden and ridiculous, but a couple of years ago, one of these breatharians actually went into a hospital and they locked him in a room. I believe the duration of this was 2 weeks with no water, no food, and his weight did not change. He showed no terms or no biological stress. He basically proved that he was able to do this, and so I wouldn't recommend that everyone out there just tries to become a breatharian. I think you really need to have some advanced consciousness, but that would be an example of a very advanced application of this sort of mental transmutation, the ability to subsist purely on oxygen. So this means far more than appears on the surface. Transmutation, alchemy, or chemistry on the mental plane is important enough in its effects, to be sure. And if the art stopped, there it would still be one of the most important branches of study known to man. But this is only the beginning. Let us see why. The first of the 7 Hermetic principles is the principle of mentalism, the axiom of which is the all is mind, the universe is mental, which means that the underlying reality of the universe is mind, and the universe itself is mental, that is, existing in the mind of the all. We shall consider this principle in succeeding lessons, but let us see the effect of the principle if it be assumed to be true. Um, so it's important to pick that apart a little bit because it can be interpreted a lot of different ways. When we say the all is mind, sometimes, for example, when the Buddha was talking about the same thing, uh, it's kind of seemed like he was implying that he meant because all we know of the world is perception. This is a foundational constituent of a lot of different philosophical systems that our only knowledge of of the universe is our perception of it. So we can never know the thing, but only our perception of the thing. So is that what this means? No, it's not. It means something. It means something a lot different. And the secret to all of this, I believe, is light. Because as I think science will shortly uncover, the relationship between consciousness and light is, it's almost as if they're one and the same thing. And all of the matter in the universe is light in a standing wave. So if it is true that consciousness and light are somehow fundamentally the same thing, or that light generates consciousness and the universe is made of light, then we're very close to being able to confirm in Western terms the fact that the all is mind. Everything in the universe is somehow generated by consciousness, that we are living in a vast eternal sea of infinite consciousness. This is a theme that appears in psychedelic thinkers, all of them basically, the New Age, Hinduism, Buddhism, on and on and on and on. It's a pretty, even Christianity at one point, Jesus said, I am the light, I am the all, and I am the light, which is basically what this book is saying right now, right? So, there are also holographic theories of both mind and the universe. And there are a lot of different ways that this expresses as well. Because if you examine individual systems, you will see a lot of the same machinations at play. The all expresses characteristics of the rest of the all, the micro and the macrocosm. They're like reflections of each other. And that is because they are each other. And the all being in the all, and the all being the all, there's tremendous. I mean, we could unpack this all day, but let's keep reading a little bit. Before we do, if the universal is mental in nature, then mental transmutation must be the art of changing the conditions of the universe along the lines of matter, force, and mind. So you see, therefore, that mental transmutation, of which the ancient writers had so much to say in their mystical works, and about which they had so few practical instructions. If all be mental, then the art which enables one to transmute mental conditions must render the master the controller of material conditions as well as those ordinarily called mental. And so this is that suggestion that our consciousness somehow has a relationship with the fundamental energies of the universe and has some ability to actually affect our experience and to influence the course of events. And this is something that pop culture has abused in terms of the light, the slit. What is it? The slit experiment, where they beamed photons at slits with an electrophotomagnetic plate behind them that recorded the patterns. And they got waves sometimes, and they got particles sometimes. And so people have developed this sort of rumor, which is really all that it is, that it's the observer, that their consciousness itself somehow interacts with these photons, and that's what causes this inconsistency in the results of these experiments. And that's not really true. But a guy named Dan Rader did an experiment that was given a Sigma 5 rating by Harvard University. And not only was it established that it is actually true that our consciousness can affect the outcome of subatomic experiments, but that people that have taken the time to develop their mind uh, were actually like experienced meditators, were actually better. They had a higher statistical probability of influencing the outcome of an experiment. So there's certainly some basis for this. I just wanted to point out that in pop culture, spirituality, and the New Age movement and manifestation gurus, they're all selling you something that you want to hear, and there's far less to this than lots of people would have you believe, because it's really easy to sell someone the idea that whatever they think of can just appear. This is basically what religion has been doing in the Western world for several thousand years. How much it doesn't work, people will continue to believe in it, which is not to say that it doesn't work to some extent. And it was also determined in that same experiment of Dan Rader's that if there's a group of people, the chances that consciousness can influence the material exponentially increases. So that's important to consider as well. If you have a group of people with the unified consciousness, they can cause changes to occur in conformity with will. Um, So, as a matter of fact, none but advanced mental alchemists have been able to attain the degree of power necessary to control the grosser physical conditions, such as the control of the elements of nature, the production or cessation of tempests, the production and cessation of earthquakes, and other great physical phenomena. But such men have existed and do exist today. And it's a matter of earnest belief to all advanced occultists of all schools that the masters exist and have powers. These powers, the best teachers assure their students, having had experiences which justify them in such belief and statements. These masters do not make public exhibitions of their powers. I've seen that happen, actually. We'll get to that in a second. So that's not always true, thankfully, but seek seclusion from crowds of men in order to better work their way along the path of attainment. We mention their existence at this point merely to call your attention to the fact that their power is entirely mental and operates along the lines of the higher mental transmutation under the Hermetic principle of mentalism. The universe is mental. Um, okay, so there's a few things that I have to point out here. One of them is why you know, some people have taken it like I'm trying to be negative or put other people's beliefs down by pointing out that the law of attraction and manifestation, all these kind of ideas, are seriously, seriously, seriously exaggerated by people that are selling the books because, who doesn't want to believe this stuff? And so when people want to believe something, they will pay you to convince them, right? And so the reason that that is bad is that, we already don't have enough respect in our culture in general for the office of the seer, the mystic, the magician, the shaman, good ones, real ones, right? And so we have this circumstance where because people have not been taught the reverence and respect of, a real mystic, a real spiritual master that is actually capable of having this kind of impact upon matter. For example, every housewife in New Jersey thinks that they can sit down and channel and manifest millions of dollars, and failure is usually not a deterrent in belief, right? It doesn't matter. You can fail all day long, and you just keep telling yourself that it'll happen eventually. And so it's not good because you have people convincing themselves that they can do things before they can, and that is self-defeating because it is possible that you could develop the skills to have that kind of impact, but without the proper reverence and the dedication, a lifelong study and commitment and development of willpower and discipline that is necessary in order to affect changes in your reality using nothing more than consciousness, you're going to have to be pretty advanced. And so, just you know, swallowing an amethyst crystal and burning some sage and then thinking that you're going to do these things is just it's just silly. So we do need to learn about this stuff, and it is possible, and I've seen it myself. I actually saw a Hawaiian. I don't know what the proper title would be because shaman isn't really correct, medicine man isn't really right, but he's sort of like the high priest of the islands. He's the top dog in Hawaiian spirituality. His name is Reynolds Kamakawiwaole or something. I mean, I'm butchering the last name, I'm sure, but you could find him. He's out there. And him and some other Native Americans came, well, also indigenous from South America, Central America, and even some Asian people came to New Mexico in order to speak with us about these types of mental powers and also about the star tribes who they were saying that all of these tribes have been in contact with. I talk about this experience all the time because it was crazy as hell. And at that event, one of the things that happened is that this Reynolds person, we were doing a ritual, and he said, "May the wind blow to confirm the power of our prayers." And the wind blew so hard that gravel was blowing across the parking lot. So that was the first time that I ever witnessed anything like that very directly. And it was a public exhibition, so I would have to take issue with the author's claim that that they don't ever do public exhibitions, because I've seen this happen within a group of, there were 12 of us, and there were other people sitting around watching. So I've seen this happen in groups. Also, anyone that's ever been to a really good Grateful Dead concert will tell you that the weather responds to large groups of people that are in a unified state of mind. And there are other circumstances like rain. I've seen an effective rain dance once as well at that same event. So, and there are also anthropological records of native people in the United States causing water to boil um, without any heat source and wind blowing. So I'm not alone in this. We actually do have quite a few people that have witnessed this sort of thing. Bullet point though, you don't just find out this is possible and then you can do it, which is what the New Age movement is telling everyone, and all these gurus are. So that's not how it works. Trust me. I can barely do this stuff, and I've devoted an entire lifetime to it. So, I mean, it's not like that. Don't pay anyone to try to convince you otherwise. But students and hermeticists of lesser degree than masters, the initiates and teachers, are able to freely work along the mental plane and mental transmutation. In fact, all that we call psychic phenomena, mental influence, mental science, new thought phenomena, etc., operates along the same general lines, for as there is but one principle involved, no matter by what name the phenomena be called. The student and practitioner of mental transmutation works along the mental plane, transmuting mental conditions, states, etc., into others according to various formulas, more or less efficacious. The various treatments, affirmations, denials, etc., of the schools of mental science are but formulas, often quite imperfect and unscientific, of the Hermetic art. The majority of modern practitioners are quite ignorant compared to the ancient masters, for they lack the fundamental knowledge upon which the work is based. This is also, one theory uh, um, of how the pyramids were built. That people that had developed the ability to interact with, it's not exactly overturning natural law, that can't happen, but that these blocks that the pyramid was built with were freed from gravity. A lot of people, Tesla, suggested that the technology either existed in the hands of the primitive people back then, or not that they were really that primitive, but I meant to say like hell a long time ago people, whatever, or that Pharaoh or whoever, Pharaoh's priest Ankh effing Khonsu or whoever it was, had developed the ability to use their mind to disassociate these blocks from gravity and move them into place while they were thus disassociated. And some have even speculated, could have just been me thinking, I guess, because I don't know where I got this from, but that the floating eye on the back of the triangle, or the eye on the triangle, the floating on the Great Seal symbol, that and that Freemason was actually a reference to that they had freed their masonry from gravity and then thus were able to construct the pyramids. In fact, the precision that is demonstrated by the pyramids is kind of hard to imagine that it wasn't done in such a way. We still can't do it to this day, and I think that's very important to mention. By the way, speaking of very important, please support the channel. We're demonetized. We get no money for this. So please hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. Follow me over to Rumble. I've started moving all my stuff over there so I can speak on a platform censorship free. You can also support us with cryptocurrency and Zelle and PayPal and all that stuff. You can find it in the description. We really do appreciate it. Okay, so we're building pyramids with our minds here. Not only may the mental states, etc., of one's self be changed or transmuted by hermetic methods, but also the states of others may be and are constantly transmuted in the same way, usually unconsciously, but often consciously by some understanding of the laws and principles, in cases where the people affected are not informed of the principles of self-protection. And more than this, as many students and practitioners of modern mental science know, every material condition, depending upon the minds of other people, may be changed or transmuted in accordance with the earnest desire, will, and treatments of person desiring change conditions of life. Now, that wasn't written very well, I don't think, but I believe that what he was saying is that the consciousness of a crowd can be affected by the sincere devotion and commitment of one individual who understands these things and does have that focus and commitment. And truth is self-substantiating. If you are truly aligned with the gestalt of the universal mind, if your actions are congruent with the universal well-being and have some kind of real utility in regards to moving the human race forwards, you will find that other people around you are sort of compulsively or subconsciously compelled to help you, to act in accordance with your own will. Earlier in this book, he talks about how the masters can constrain the minds of others even to his uh, agenda. And the reality is that if you know about science, which is one of the prerequisites of understanding Hermeticism and any of the sort of secret doctrine style teachings, on understanding the most, Aleister Crowley, for example, had a secretary that he hired full time to keep an eye on scientific developments and keep him abreast of it every single day, right? Everything that happened in the realm of science, he wanted to know. And this is kind of contrary to what we think of when we think of people that are performing magic or that are mystics. There's a tendency to believe that people are, these people are anti-science, and that science people are anti-mysticism. And that is a huge travesty. But what I'm getting at here is that it's actually true that people of a more neutral or lower level, to put it bluntly, of consciousness cannot help but have their consciousness constrained to that of a higher order, especially if they're in close proximity with that higher cycle, because entrainment tells us that lower cycles entrain with higher cycles. And so it's not even that the adept has to think like, oh, I need to get control of the minds of these people. They can't help it. They will just entrain with his mind and they will do his will without even being aware. And hopefully it's a brother of the right hand path who is constraining their consciousness to his agenda. Other you may find yourself in a heap of shit, which is part of the explanation for what we see in the world today. It is true that a lot of the elites and a lot of the people that are in power today absolutely are aware of all of this stuff. They know these sciences, and they totally will exploit them and have exploited them to their advantage. Another aspect of this transmutation idea and how you're using this knowledge in a way that is mental, but it has effects that are physical, is but it's about reducing your understanding. For example, the pyramid is the most stable structure known, right? So, if you understand the Hermetic sciences, that if you build an economy based on the structure of the pyramid, it's going to have the same attributes in terms of stability that the physical pyramid does. And so this is the real, if you're trying to figure out how to use sacred geometry and like how is this stuff applicable in a pragmatic sense, in a real world sense, how do we use it? That's a tremendous example of how these geometric forms in the 3D world translate into utility in non-physical systems. Um, all of the same universal laws are governing everything, regardless of whether it's no matter what the system is. And also along the lines of actual utility for mental transmutation. Um, I feel like I should offer you a technique for achieving this. And transmuting states could include something like unaddicting yourself, right? Like my cigarette habit that I had since I was maybe 9 years old. The mastery of the breath uh, is one of the best entry points to the mastery of the mind. And there are so many reasons for this, but the mind works in symbolic language, and so mastering your breath, it is your life, and so it's symbolic of mastering every element of your life to master your breath. But then beyond that, there are biophysical uh, elements to it, particularly in terms of your neurobiology. Um, Inundating the brain that's very malleable with oxygen allows it to, that's basically the fuel that it uses to build new neural pathways to achieve neurogenesis. And these altered states that come from inundating the brain with oxygen or depriving the brain of oxygen increase neuroplasticity. And so allows us to change habits and behaviors. And so if you combine enhanced neuroplasticity with neurogenesis, what you have is a more rapidly growing brain that's in a more malleable state. So what does that mean? You can transform habits in a couple of hours that have taken you a whole lifetime to acquire. And I've proven this to be true. And psychedelics help a lot. Better than anything, actually. And this is proven by science. So if you're one of those people that is still, living in the last century and doesn't understand the utility of psychedelics, it's time for you to DYOR, because it's all totally substantiated by clinical research that this is true. But if you combine something like pranayama, where you are inundating and also depriving the brain alternately of the oxygen fuel that it needs while you've taken a moderate dose of LSD that is within your power to control, you can repattern any habit. And I did this with cigarette smoking in just a couple of hours. And all that is really required is that you say, choose the fourfold breath, which is what Hermetic magicians generally will start with. The fourfold breath is often used to prepare for the lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram or the middle pillar or the star sapphire or whatever it is. Before a ritual work, oftentimes the fourfold breath is used. And so you're inhaling for a 4 count, holding for a 4 count, exhaling for a count of 4, and keeping the breath distended for a count of 4. And then, it's more effective if you can increase how long you're holding, particularly, and how long you keep the breath um, distended, because what you want is the maximum inundation of oxygen to the brain and then maximum deprivation in order to rapidly achieve these states like samadhi and satori, for example, but also because, as you are holding in the breath, you are allowing your brain to do its work with all this extra fuel, right? And so you're focusing on what you're trying to retain or learn or the new pattern. And when you're exhaling, what you're trying to release. And that's basically it. So, 100 micrograms of LSD and a couple of hours of pranayama, and you can transmutate any state into another state, and it will have lasting effects. So that would be my advice for that's the best you're going to do with mental transmutation. And I could also attempt to describe, I guess, the feeling. When you're trying to control anxiety and fear, which is extremely important because fear and anxiety act as a sort of an interference pattern, right? Um, you are trying to become like a hollow tube to draw down fire from heaven, right? The inspiration, the clarity, divine guidance, however you want to think of it, the LVX from the heavens, or downloads from the universal consciousness. We have all kinds of ways of terminologizing this, right? So, but the magician must make himself a fit receptacle. You can attract any force that you need, but you have to make yourself a fit receptacle for that force. And so if there's a bunch of, there's all this interference pattern in there because you have this frantic burning energy, which is very difficult. And so this is not what we want. And there are lots of other reasons why, fear and anxiety are not helpful. But the thing is, they are energy. They are energy. And so, energy cannot be destroyed. You can't get rid of your anxiety and your stress, but you can transmutate your lead into gold, and you can use the breath assisted by the miraculous powers of the mind to transmutate this into something more useful. And so when you're taking this breath in, when you're feeling stressed, there's like this, at least for myself, there's like this inner tingling that's unpleasant. And it's almost reminds me of like, in coals, when you see the little dancing fire sparks and just it kind of like flares up a little bit in the coals. And when you blow on it, it all becomes a uniform. It all turns orange. It's the same exact thing that you're kind of focusing on, except that the feeling is the opposite. These heated coals are being cooled by the breath as you're inhaling it, and it really is helpful and important to focus on the movements of energy within the body, because that's what they actually are, in my opinion. And if you can feel them as such, while you're working with them, I think it's extremely important. I think we're just about done with transmutation. Okay, in this little book, we shall state the basic principles of mental transmutation, that all who read may grasp the underlying principles, and thus possess the master key that will unlock the many doors of the principle of polarity. We shall now proceed to a consideration of the first of the Hermetic seven principles, the principle of mentalism, in which is explained the truth that the all is mind and the universe is mental, in the words of the Kybalion. We ask the close attention and careful study of this great principle on the part of our students, for it is really the basic principle of the whole Hermetic philosophy and of the Hermetic art of mental transmutation. And it's 8:12, so we will do one more of these, and then there will be a part three coming along very soon. I don't know if I like this light. Well, I guess that's as good as it gets. All right, so the all. This is chapter 4 now. Under and back of. That's interesting. A lot of these people from this era, I guess, they would say that back of instead of behind. Alice Bailey, who is a student of Blavatsky, I'd very strongly recommend her work. Um, uh, Quite the genius, this woman, and pretty well unknown. She also said that a lot. So, under and back of the universe of time, space, and change is ever to be found the substantial reality and fundamental truth. Um, Substance means that which underlies all outward manifestations, the essence, the essential reality, the thing in itself that we cannot know. Substantial means actually existing, being the essential element, being real, etc. Reality means the state of being real, true, enduring, valid, fixed, permanent, actual. Under and behind all outward appearances or manifestations, there must always be a substantial reality. This is the law. Man, considering the universe, of which he is a unit, sees nothing but change in matter, forces, and mental states. He sees that nothing really is, but everything is becoming and changing. Nothing stands still. Everything is being born, growing, dying. The very instant a thing reaches its height, it begins to decline. The law of rhythm is in constant operation. There is no reality, enduring quality, fixity, or substantiality in anything. Nothing is permanent but change. He sees all things revolving from other things and resolving into other things, a constant action and reaction, inflow and outflow, building up and tearing down, creation and destruction, birth, growth, and death. Nothing endures but change. And if he be a thinking man, he realizes that all of these changing things must be but outward appearances or manifestations of some underlying power, some substantial reality. All thinkers in all lands and in all times have assumed the necessity for postulating the existence of this substantial reality. All philosophies worthy of the name have been based upon this thought. Men have given to this substantial reality many names. Some have called it by the term of deity. Others have called it the infinite and eternal energy. Others have tried to call it matter, but all have acknowledged its existence. It is self-evident. It needs no argument. I have called it the organizing principle, but unfortunately, philosophy had already used that term, and so sometimes when I use it, it might sound out of context to sure, Rob. Yeah, eventually I'll do Blavatsky and Bailey, and we'll get into their stuff. Really, actually, super interesting. Blavatsky was uh, she spoke 22 languages. Princess, pretty wild, and one of the few women I think that Aleister Crowley really had respect for. He actually did commentary to one of her books. But anyways, the organizing principle, which I also have always believed was consciousness itself, that it is through the mechanism actually of electromagnetic waves that consciousness is able to impose order and symmetry, or order by means of symmetry, upon the chaotic energy, of the primordial soup before planets and stars have sort of crystallized into existence. And so it is consciousness that is the organizing principle, and it acts through what we call electromagnetic waves and the other three fields. So the four fields of physics work together to produce the fifth field, the quintessence, which is consciousness. Um, Again, we have a chicken or the egg problem, because I also suggest that consciousness is the origin of everything. But if that's true, then how can it require four fields to create it? Again, my experience with psychedelics and the words of mystics throughout time seem to suggest that time is not what we think it is. And so chicken or egg problems totally evaporate if we do away with the idea of um, linear time. So, in these lessons, we have followed the example of some of the world's greatest thinkers, both ancient and modern, the Hermetic masters, and have called this underlying power the substantial reality by the Hermetic name of the All, which term we consider the most comprehensive of the many terms applied by man to that which transcends names and terms. We accept and teach the view of the great Hermetic thinkers of all times, as well as those illumined souls who have reached higher planes of being, both of whom assert that the inner nature of the all is unknowable. This must be so, for naught by the all itself can comprehend its own nature and being. Um, why are we frozen? Well, it looks like my laptop is frozen, but we're still going. What? Here, let me see if I can fix it, because I won't be able to read the chat. Okay, there we go. All right, so interesting choice of words as well, because in my opinion, the ultimate unknowable is only unknowable because it's nothing, and nothingness is what, when we actually talk about the ultimate reality, as most of you guys that follow my channel know, nothingness is that ultimate reality to me. This is where the great paradox of the universe originated. It's why there's paradox in everything, because all of the other elements of the universe, all of the constituent parts, are reflections of this one thing and this one process. And so, we have this idea of nothingness becoming conscious. And so he gave a hint to this by saying that the the all, the inner nature of the all, is unknowable, for naught by the all itself can comprehend its own, but the all itself can comprehend its own nature and being. So there is that hint that this ultimate reality is nothingness, that at the very heart of existence, it's nothingness. Well, I appreciate that. Those are very kind words, Harshit. I hope I'm not butchering your name too badly. Um, is that Egyptian? Uh, So the Hermeticists believe and teach the all in itself is and must ever be unknowable. They regard all the theories, guesses, and speculations. Uh, um, they regard all the theories, guesses, and speculations of the theologians and metaphysicians regarding the inner nature of the all as but the childish efforts of mortal minds to grasp the secret of the infinite. Such efforts have always failed and will always fail from the very nature of the task. One pursuing such inquiries travels around and around in the labyrinth of thought until he is lost to all sane reasoning, action, or conduct, and is utterly unfitted for the work of life. He is like a squirrel which frantically runs around and around the circling treadmill wheel of his cage, traveling ever and yet reaching nowhere. At the end, a prisoner still and standing just where he started. Well, if he gets to nowhere, then he's gone to the all, hasn't he? And I want to point out that I don't agree with every single word written in this book. And I think that if everything written in this book were absolutely correct, we wouldn't need to have this conversation. No matter how good things get, no matter how evolved the systems are, we have not attained to perfection. You will not find the absolute nothing that lacks any imperfections. Our job and our duty is to, take what our ancestors have left us and improve upon it. That's why we're here. It's part of the reason we're here, anyways. And so, this idea that the all is sort of unknowable and that our minds will just break down, and I don't believe that personally. I think that, in fact, the point of the universe is that eventually sentient consciousness will get to the point where it does know everything, and that will destroy the universe. And that is what happens right at the moment when the eye of Shiva opens and the universe is destroyed, as the Hindus put it. This isn't just my idea. This is something that I've noticed is pretty universal, and that's a very good practice, by the way, you guys. When you can find the stuff that's universally present in all of these, especially disparate systems. For example, when you see in the jungles of Borneo that a sorcerer is turning to the left, and you see that the Europeans have the left-hand path, and then you see that the left hand of Shiva is destructive, and then you have the coca leaf on the left of the Shwar shaman is the left-hand path, and it's the same. It's the same attributes, and not just that it's bad, but also the other attributes, masculinity, and sort of ego consciousness and all of this, all the same attributes, on the same side. It's a remarkable thing, and it's one of the ways that the Illuminati, for example, that's one of the practices to attain to these higher states of consciousness, is to look around for all of this stuff and extract these things, because if you see these consistencies in totally disparate systems, there's a good indication that they are that's separating the wheat from the chaff, right? That you've really stumbled on something. Um, and the differences are all the falsehoods, by and large. So I'm just saying that when he says that we will always fail, I don't believe that. And yet, and still more presumptuous than saying that we will always fail, I guess, are those who attempt to ascribe the all, the personality, qualities, properties, characteristics, and attributes of themselves, ascribing to the all the human emotions, feelings, and characteristics, even down to the pettiest qualities of mankind, such as jealousy, susceptibility to flattery and praise, desire for offerings and worship, and all of the other survivals from the days of the childhood of the race. Such ideas are not worthy of grown men and women and are rapidly being discarded. And of course, he's taking direct aim and shot at the Judeo Christian God, Jehovah, who is wrathful and jealous of other gods, even though he says he's the only God. How that's possible is totally beyond me. Um, you know what I mean? So this jealousy and temptation that is then punished, in the United States, even one of the most unfair legal systems well, up there as far as European countries go, we'll say that very unfair legal system. That's entrapment. They re-legalized it. It's true, but I'm just saying, like, even judiciary complexes or whatever, bodies were more fair than this supposed God. And so attributing all of these ridiculous human characteristics to deity or the all is clearly stupid because we expect, enlightened or even highly religious people to conduct themselves in such a way that those attributes that are attributed to this God are not even present in their behavior. So how in the hell is, the ultimate being supposed to exhibit these things that humans are not, it's not looked upon with favor for humans to do it. Um, Quite silly. Uh, at this point, it may be proper for me to state and make a distinction between religion and theology. And I would have said religion and spirituality because these things are not the same. Between philosophy and metaphysics, religion to us means the institutional realization or the intuitional realization of the existence of the all and one's relationship to it. I would have said institutional, but intuitional is fine, I guess. And one's relationship to it. While theology means that the attempts of men to ascribe personality, qualities, and characteristics to it, their theories regarding its affairs, will, desires, plans, and their assumption of the office of middlemen or priests between the all and the people. Philosophy to us means the inquiry after knowledge of things knowable and thinkable, while metaphysics means the attempt to carry the inquiry over and beyond the boundaries into regions unknowable and unthinkable, and with the same tendency as that of theology. And consequently, both religion and philosophy mean to us things having roots in reality, in substantive reality in the material world, while theology and metaphysics seem like broken reeds rooted in the quicksands of ignorance, and affording naught but the most insecure support for the mind or soul of man. We do not insist upon our students accepting these definitions. We mention them merely to show our position. I think that theology, okay, but I don't see what his beef with metaphysics is about, really. And his definition of metaphysics isn't really correct either. Metaphysics is more just attempting to answer the question of the whys of the universe. What are we here for? That's really it. Uh, and so the essential nature of the all is unknowable. There are certain truths connected with its existence which the human mind finds itself compelled to accept. And an examination of these reports form a proper subject of inquiry, particularly as they agree with the reports of the illuminated on higher planes. And to this inquiry, we now invite you. That which is the fundamental truth, the substantial reality, is beyond true naming, but the wise men call it the all. I also want to point out that one of my other beefs with this author is that he will occasionally, um, what is the word? Sort of uh, balance or justify his uh, the teachings in this book by saying that it's coming from some higher source. My language is failing me, but that's always bothered me, and I don't think it's not necessary that. And your subjective place or being is from a higher plane is just subjective perception. I think that if you're really, and it's true of the Kybalion, if your shit has substance, it's going to be self-substantiating. It's going to prove itself on its own, and there's predicated on knowledge from higher beings or approval. You don't need to do that, and I personally I find it distasteful. Um, but anyways, in its essence, the all is unknowable. The human reason, whose reports we must accept so long as we think at all, informs us as follows regarding the all, and that without attempting to remove the veil of the unknowable, the all must be all that really is. There can be nothing existing outside of the all, else the all would not be the all. The all must be infinite, for there is nothing else to define, confine, bound, limit, or restrict the all. It must be infinite in time or eternal. It must have always continuously existed, for there is nothing else to have ever created it, and something can never evolve from nothing. And if it had never not been, even for a moment, it would not be now. It must continuously exist forever, for there is nothing to destroy it. It can never not be, even for a moment, because something can never become nothing. It must be infinite in space. It must be everywhere, for there is no place outside of the all. It cannot be otherwise than continuous in space, without break, cessation, separation, or interruption. For there is nothing to break, separate, or interrupt its continuity, and nothing with which to fill in the gaps. It must be infinite in power or absolute, for there is nothing to limit, restrict, restrain, confine, disturb, or condition it. It is subject to no other power, for there is no other power. Um, Again, some of this I have a bit of an issue with. When we talk about infinite and power, um, I think it kind of begs the question then that why are things the way they are? If it could create a universe under any conditions that it introduce evil and suffering and all of these things, my understanding of it is that the laws of the universe are as they are because we would either have nothing or this, and the laws of the universe are as they are because they have to be predicated as such. Otherwise, we couldn't have this reality and an experience to go with it. And so the fact that we have necessity implies that this power is not infinite. And so I don't know if I'm buying that. But as far as the all always having to have existed, that is sort of true because we know that energy cannot be destroyed, for example, and I don't know that it can be created. So in some sense, everything that's here now had to have been here in some way, shape, or form uh, uh, ever since. But I think that even showing up in the form of absolute nothingness is still somehow somethingness. Um, you know what I mean? Like, and the Jews tried to deal with this. The Jewish mysticism of the Kabbalah by positing, you know, the Ein Sof Hour, the Ein Sof, and the Ein as different levels of negative existence. With the Ein being so nothing that there is no is or it that is even applicable. But you know, based on our understanding of energy, it does seem to be true that in some way, shape, or form, the all has always been the all, because it cannot be created or destroyed. Change in its real nature, for there is nothing to where it changes upon it, nothing into which it could change, nor from which it could have changed. It cannot be added nor subtracted from, increased nor diminished, nor become greater or lesser in any respect whatsoever. It must have always been and must always remain just what it is now. The all. There has never been, is not now, and never will be anything else into which it can change. The all being infinite, absolute, eternal, unchangeable, it must follow that anything finite, changeable, fleeting, and conditioned cannot be the all. And as there is nothing outside of the all in reality, then any and all such finite things must be nothing in reality. This is important. Uh, and you'll notice, like, if you were looking at this, you would see that he capitalizes nothing in the same way that you would deity. Okay, but this nothingness being at the heart and center, this is supposed to be, and I'm sorry for the spoiler, this is supposed to be like the central secret of all of this kind of mysticism. And so there are little clues throughout this book in reference to that. And you'll also know that there's an extreme paradox and almost hypocrisy because it keeps saying that there is never nothing, that the all is always there, but then there's this repetitive referencing to nothing. And, you know, I, the best that I can do, that's intentional, if that helps. And you have to remember that it is necessary that we have these paradoxes because creation arises from the interplay of antinomies, from opposite forces interacting. And so this absolute as everything and nothing is basically essential to the existence of the universe. And it is both true and All of these things are true and false, and it is both true and false to say that they are true and false. And that also is, an essential element of everything in the universe, that it contains its contradiction. Um, and so, uh, just a second. So there are a couple of there are a couple of ways that you can. There are mathematical proofs that the all is in the all, and one of them is that any number is infinite, and that any number divided or multiplied by infinity is uh, infinity. And so there's a lengthy explanation of all of that in Alistair Crowley's um, comments to the Book of the Law. It's really worth reading, and it's when he says every number is infinite, there is no difference. And so, you know, every number contains infinity, and within infinity is every single number. And so, as math is the fundamental basis of the universe, you can actually see this function in numbers. I hope I did an okay job of explaining that. Um, yeah. So, how much longer is this? I still have to get this T-shirt done. All right, we may have to go just a little bit further, and then I'll make sure that I mark my page this time so that we can pick up where we left off. Um, okay, so we see around that which is called matter, which forms the physical foundation of all forms. Is the all merely matter? Not at all. Matter cannot manifest life or mind, and as life and mind are manifested in the universe, the all cannot be matter, for nothing rises higher than its own source. Nothing is ever manifested in an effect that is not in the cause. Nothing is evolved as a consequent that is not involved as an antecedent. And then modern science informs us that there is really no such thing as matter. That which we call matter is merely interrupted energy or force. That is energy or force at a low rate of vibration. As a recent writer has said, matter has melted into mystery. Even material science has abandoned the theory of matter and now rests on the basis of energy. Then is the all merely energy or force? Not energy or force as the materialists use the terms, for their energy and force are blind mechanical things devoid of life or mind. Life and mind can never evolve from blind energy or force for the reason given a moment ago. Nothing can rise higher than its source. Nothing is evolved unless it is involved. Nothing manifests in the effect unless it is in the cause. Um, I really like that nothing is evolved unless it is involved, uh, because it's being created in with a relationship to its environment, of course. Um, and so the all cannot be mere energy or force, for if it were, there would be no such thing as life and mind and existence, and we know better than that, for we are alive and using mind to consider this question. And so are those who claim that energy or force is everything. What is there than higher? What what is there then higher than matter or energy that we know to be existent in the universe? Life and mind. Life and mind and all their varying degrees of unfoldment. Then you ask, do you mean to tell us the all is life and mind? Yes and no is our answer. If you mean life and mind as we poor petty mortals know them, we say, no, the all is not that. But what kind of life and mind do you mean? You ask. The answer is living mind, as far above that which mortals know by those words, as life and mind are higher than mechanical forces or matter, infinite living mind as compared to finite life and mind, we mean that which the illumined souls mean when they reverently pronounce the word spirit. The all is infinite living mind. The illumined call it spirit. Okay, and that is the end of that chapter, and the next one will be chapter 5, the mental universe. I don't want to fold this page because this is an 81-year-old first edition copy. Um, oh no, it was 81 when I found it, so now it's like 90 years old, I guess. Um, in excellent condition too. That's just brand new. Okay, so page 65 reduces to 11, no problem. And so I think that that last bit is really the fundamental thing, the most important understanding and message of the Hermetic teachings, but it's also basically what indigenous people say everywhere. The Buddha was trying to tell people. Most people that contemplate the universe without the having overcome the influence of culture, your cult, um, they eventually realize that it's obviously not true that there is like an all-powerful, omniscient God that you can just call out to and he'll come save you or whatever. This is clearly a fairy tale, devised by a child, the human race as a child, and the reality is something much more sophisticated than that. And it's also obvious that the universe is not actually blind, random gobbledygook that it's just random, like what electrical charge just organized the fucking eyeball and the human brain. I mean, it's so silly. This suggestion of the modern materialist, that's all the universe is. That it's like it's incredible that anyone believes it. Um, and of course, because nothing. And listen to this. This is how it's so easy to believe for so many people. Um, Nothing in the universe happens without a mechanistic basis. There has to be a process. There is no, how did the Kybalion put it? There is no, um, nothing happens that isn't related to its cause, right? Uh, so it is possible in a way to observe everything in the universe, and you can see its deterministic basis. You can see how it happen materially, but it's sort of logic to then say, so because we can see how this happened, that means there's no intelligence inextricably intertwined with all of it that has, you know what I mean? Like that's not that's not even scientific. It just makes no sense. And so this idea that we are living in a vast sea of consciousness, and it is interactive to some degree. We experience synchronicities, we experience intuitions and precognitions, and we have guidance sometimes that seems to come from somewhere other. I have encountered entities on the DMT realm and other normal states of mind that have been able to tell me things they couldn't possibly know that were accurate. So to replace this sort of fairy tale children's version of the sky god with a living mind that we inhabit is a pretty satisfying. Did it come back? Yeah, it came back. So that's it, and I'm sure you guys know that, but it's also it's also something that people seem to realize pretty rapidly after a psychedelic experience. It's something that we can almost it's almost a reliable effect of those compounds that people will not necessarily become religious because that you don't want to become religious, but people will realize that the universe could not possibly be just blind matter that has randomly. I mean, to compare the idea that even human biology has configured itself at random is even more insane than saying, well, a tornado flew over a junkyard and assembled 747. If you were to suggest that to most atheist, materialist, whatever, those folks, they would say that it's absolutely absurd. And yet they are convinced that the universe has constructed, far more sophisticated technology, biotechnology, in exactly the same way. Tornado flies over a junkyard, builds a 747. That is more likely than the random development of the human eyeball alone. Even Darwin said that the human eyeball is too sophisticated for his theory to actually work. And that's something that, Darwinian evolutionists really gloss over because Darwin himself said, this is a really nice theory, but it's clearly not true. Uh, or at least it's not the whole truth. It's some of the truth. Of course it is, but it's not the whole truth. And so the Kybalion, even though I feel like it misses pretty badly a few times, that's why we're here to advance and to extract from these all of the things that were given to us, the gifts of our ancestors and the ancients, and to create improved versions of these systems. Um, we are going through what I've been describing lately as a collective Saturn return. The entire human race is experiencing a Saturn return, and it will either drag us down like a stone or lift us up like a child full of light and innocence. It is always chaos that precedes a new order. So this emergent chaostrophe is a contingency that is necessary for the development of another stage in the life of humanity. It's no guarantee that we will make it. We may fail. It could all be for nothing. That happens. You know, it happens. And this is another thing that I like kind of about the Kybalion and this kind of spirituality is that you're not looking for something that will make you delusional enough that you can deal with the harder parts of life. That's not what this stuff is for. It's not there to make you believe that everything is love and light and that nothing is ever going to go wrong and that there's a sky god taking care of you and all of that. In fact, the opposite is true. It engenders you to, notice that sometimes children die or, all of these terrible catastrophes can actually happen. There are senseless destructions, senseless failures. These things are real and it could happen to the entire human race. And instead of saying, oh, why think about these negative things, you think about them because you don't want the human race to fail. And then you use your knowledge of the existence of chaos and the possibility of failure to drive you, to compel you to succeed and to make contributions to the human race in general that encourage the survival and the success of the collective as well as the individual. It is one of the great failures of our Western civilization that we have been able to somehow extricate individual well-being from collective well-being, and this is totally an illusion. It is a lie.